I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Staines. That's my buddy Patrick McCray. That's my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski. We are here to pay tribute to the late, great Carl Weathers, who passed away yesterday at the age of 76, I believe, in his sleep. Before we get started talking about him, please join us and bow your heads and for a moment of silence. Okay. Um, let's start with Butch first. What do you want to say about Carl Weathers' amazing acting career?
A lot of people don't know, or maybe they do. Probably after today, Carl Weathers actually played professional football in the NFL for 1 year for the then Oakland Raiders in 1970. Um, he went on to play a few more years in the Canadian Football League. Decided, you know what, acting seems a lot better. Probably paid a lot better back then. I guess, like most people, my first introduction to him was in Rocky, playing Muhammad Ali. I mean Apollo Creed. He was perfect. We've done a lot of videos and we talk about who could play this role and who could play that role. And I'm not saying nobody else could do a reboot of Rocky. I wish they wouldn't. I'm not saying nobody else could play Apollo Creed, but he was perfect. He, especially for the time, because I remember being a kid and I remember listening to a Muhammad Ali fight. I'm not even sure I had seen him by the time, Muhammad Ali, by the time I saw Rocky, and I was confused. I thought it was Muhammad Ali, and just he was a very charismatic, very I won't say cocky, but it came off that way, but in a good way, very enjoyable. There's cocky that you don't want to be around, and then there's cocky that's kind of fun to watch in a movie. And I remember watching. I rented, show my age, a videotape of Action Jackson, which is a movie he made. People goes, "Hey, look, hey, what the heck? It's Carl Weathers." And I was glad when he got cast in Mandalorian. He was actually one of my favorite characters, and that is just these guys I grew up on. I wanted to grab something to have a prop, so he I don't know if he was ever quote an A-lister, but he did. He was a really good in his role, and he was enjoyable, and he entertained us, and I think that's probably the best thing any actor wants to hear. Hey, you entertained me. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Patrick?
Yeah, I think Isaac Asimov would have called that cheerful self-appreciation. Was what Carl Weathers often projected, or it's what Apollo Creed projected. And and there are differences. Yeah. I got to kind of be around, spend some time around Carl Weathers at this Mad Monster convention I went to with Kathleen Lee Scott, and he just projected this sense of constant benevolence and very careful about his health. He wore a mask, even at that point. Nobody else. I mean, they were wearing monster masks, but not a COVID mask. But he had that on. I haven't really looked at his cause of death. I hate doing that when celebrities pass away. It's enough that they're gone. But now I kind of wonder, God, was that related to whatever, facilitated his accident? I don't know. But uh I, of course, remember him from the Rocky movies when I was a kid, and thought he was sort of an interesting and flamboyant figure. And it was really when he was thoroughly the sort of the good guy, eventually in Rocky 3, which is a great and underrated movie, that I really got to step back and see him as something other than the automatic Rocky adversary. And he was Stallone made such a wise choice in kind of shifting Apollo Creed into that type of role. Um, Someone who's kind of both an Obi-Wan and a contemporary. Um, but I didn't realize how much I liked Carl Weathers until I saw Predator, which, Carl Weathers, I wish I'd seen him in more movies, but in Predator, when Carl Weathers came on screen, I just smiled. I just thought, oh, great, it's Carl Weathers, and what an interesting response. I mean, I wasn't expecting that, and he made Action Jackson shortly after that, and man, when that trailer hit, I had to see that in theaters. I was there opening day, and I had a blast. Um, and I could go through the rest of the Withersian filmography, but the when I got the news today, I didn't realize. I always knew that I liked him as a film presence, and I've covered a lot of celebrity deaths, but I don't think one has kind of hit me like this. Excluding Laura Parker, but that's sort of family. I mean, as Dark Shadows fans are sort of expected to respond that way. Uh, but I haven't been hit with a celebrity death like this since Roger Moore, and what really struck me is what a place in the firmament of my childhood he had. And Joel is so overtaken he has to leave the room. My God, he's huge. Not in an overweight sense. He's just tall, and he's like Paul Bunyan.
I had
Like,
no idea how tall he was.
oh
until he
yeah,
said
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, he takes off his shirt. You see Kenmore written on his his
Coming
shirt.
back.
And so that's when he told me that Julie was his beard. And oh, hey, Jewel. Um, anyway, so uh, uh, so I hadn't realized sort of how one person could be just this immediate ambassador of goodwill. That there are celebrities who we like, and we like their movies and so on and so forth. But it's a very rare echelon of celebrity, especially actor, not known for comedy or things like that, who just makes you feel like the universe is a little better. Like people are a little better, like people can be a little more trustworthy and kind, and yet, well, agents of accountability, as Carl Weathers. I mean, think back to his appearances on Arrested Development, and Carl Weathers just made every project better. We can fall into as many cliches as you like about that, but that's a very unique quality that just comes from inside, and just this sense of everything right that you would want with a male lead in, or even a supporting character in a movie. For me, Carl Weathers really represented. The way we speculate about Dark Shadows. I used to speculate back in my objectivist days about an Atlas Shrugged movie. And in Atlas Shrugged, you kind of have this character who is the Ubermensch. He is the man of men, and his name is John Galt. And in the book, one of the famous phrases to come out of the book is, "Who is John Galt?" And my answer always was Carl Weathers. Carl Weathers is who it would have pissed off every objectivist on the planet. But what a great John Galt he would have played. John Galt's an engineer, and he's sort of an action hero at one point. Um, So, I had this wonderful outpouring of sadness, and it was a good sadness. It was a sadness that made me feel like there is something to be mourned in the world, rather than just feel cynical. Uh, and again, that the Mandalorian and Arrested Development should be kind of the capstones of his career is terrific, because they're both wonderful projects. And kudos to Jon Favreau for saying, you know who I need in this franchise to make things work? The unlikely trio of Nick Nolte as an Ugnaught or something. Yeah. Nick Nolte, Carl Weathers, and Werner Herzog. That's a rat pack I would follow anywhere. And they are three people who really make me happy. And and the as cliched as this sounds, the world's really kind of a better place when Carl Weathers is around. It just and it's only casts actors and works with actors. That's a rare quality, and I really miss him. It's and I'm so glad that he was with us.
Yeah. Gordon?
Oh, well, I first, like Butch and Patrick, saw Carl Weathers in Rocky. And Rocky was a very formative film in my youth as well. And I think that, especially since the film is about a man accepting that, hey, maybe he doesn't have to win, he just has to go the distance. And you need an actor that has a presence. And Carl Weathers has a presence. And I think what's great about Carl Weathers is that he could have taken that role and just done it throughout his career. That every script he took would have been a variation on that. I would say even though he's probably been lumped in the action category, I would say he's a character actor, that much as say William Shallert or Robert Foxworthy, Robert Foxworthy, I'm not sure of his last name, but you've got Predator. Later on in his career, Weathers, I know, starred in a couple of Adam Sandler movies. I haven't seen those, but he also Weathers stepped in for like the last season or two of In the Heat of the Night, when Howard Rollins had some very serious personal issues and he had to step aside. He was also one of the co-leads in Chicago Justice, which was the ill-fated attempt to do Law and Order in Chicago, because in Chicago we don't, we handle Law and Order a little differently than New York, I'll say. Then you've got Arrested Development, The Mandalorian, and of course, I think Action Jackson is the action franchise we were seriously denied. It is a perfect act. In fact, I went on a little bit of a rant because I tried to find it because I wanted to watch it before this podcast. You'll see it listed on Pluto and Tubi. It's not the Action Jackson with Carl Weathers. It's about some ski dude. So shame on you, Pluto and Tubi.
Get out of here!
I wish I were kidding.
That sucks.
But so I had to acquire it through other means, shall we say?
So
I'll be watching that. But yeah, it's Carl Weathers is a very solid actor. He's one of those guys who he is consistent. He gives it his all. And it's very understated. He's not a very showy, like, I'm sure there are times he could have been like, hey, look at me, I'm Carl Weathers. You never get that. There's this great line of stability and consistency in performance. And I think that, I was actually shocked to read that he had passed, because there's usually when a celebrity is about to pass, there's usually some awareness that they're sick or they're ill. It's very rarely that you find out, oh, well, he passed away in his sleep, or it's rarely this sudden. And I think that's what makes it so harsh, was that this wasn't expected at all.
I
And
mean,
I think
he wasn't even old by contemporary standards.
right. So I think I think this is a real definite loss because it just comes straight out of nowhere.
Yeah. I'm the only cat here who did not see Carl Weathers first in Rocky. I actually saw him first in a little movie called Death Hunt with Charles Bronson many moons ago when I was a kid at my grandfather's house. As I've told Butch before, he would watch Westerns, and during a Western marathon, this came on. And here's an actor, like Butch said, was an athlete first, but the actors he was in movies with were all A-listers. And though his character probably wasn't written to outshine some of those other characters he was with, he's an actor who got your attention right away. Just either A, from his look, or B, from his natural charisma, or the way
That's who he
would deliver his lines. It was so flawless. And I mean, just like that, with the snap of your fingers, you were intrigued by any character he played. And that's a tribute to the actor, to the man, Carl Weathers. No offense to the writers who wrote his lines. It's just, my God, he could carry any script, good, bad, ugly, and make it look great. Anything he was given. There's a movie called Force 10 from Navarone, and his character is not a character that's a big time character, but he makes his character a big time character in that movie. A very interesting character in that movie. And again, I did watch all the Rockies after Death Hunt, and again, I know he's going to be remembered for Apollo Creed, and that's great. But he's like Gordon said, he was a character. Right on. And he was somebody who literally you could put in any role and he would make that role shine. Because that's how talented this guy was. When I say amazing performer, he's up there. He may have not have had or been an A-lister, but he could compete with any A-lister, with the best of them, because he was just so naturally charismatic. We talked about the show The Prisoner and how the actor on that show had prestige. That's what Carl Weathers had.
Yeah.
Carl Weathers had that very much. And when I read that, my jaw hit the ground. When I read he passed away in his sleep, my jaw hit the ground. I said, Carl Weathers passed away. And she said, the guy who played Apollo Creed? I said, yeah. And I said, it was insane. And first of all, and I'm sure I speak for Butch and Gordon and Patrick, to his family, we are very sorry for your loss. I mean, we didn't know him personally, but what a performer. I mean, and if you've seen him on TV, he was put in the commercials for the Super Bowl halftime with Rob Gronkowski. But to me, he's more noticeable than Gronkowski is. And that's just how great he is. So I can't. I'll say this though: are there things I wish he would have got to do? Yeah,
I'm sure.
I could list that for any actor, but for anything he was in, when I saw Carl Weathers' name in the credits, I wasn't so much focused on the plot, or I was always curious, how great is he going to make this character? When you watch Predator, there are two people who steal that movie. One's Jesse Ventura and the other's Carl Weathers. And they both really do a great job. I mean, it's...
Joel, did you see Arrested Development?
I never watched it.
It's a very, very funny show, except for the second two Netflix seasons. But the first three seasons are about as perfect as any show gets. And there have been these references throughout the show up to a certain point that this this guy who wants to be an actor who's just wildly untalented, but doesn't know it. He keeps talking about he's going to Carl Weathers' stage combat classes, which had sort of a sense of realism, and that Carl, whose phone was not ringing off the hook, I think the way any of us would like to have seen it ring off the hook, but was nevertheless he's a working actor, he's a working director. Carl Weathers ended up playing himself over and over. He keeps showing up in unlikely times, and it's almost like the person who's talking about being friends with some celebrity and no one believes them, and then they show up. And Weathers was really funny. He's really funny, and he was kind of the conceptual author of how he would be funny, because he told Mitch Hurwitz, he said, "I don't want to do Rocky jokes." He said, I got a lot more than just Rocky jokes, so I'll do this series of cameos if I can do something other than Rocky jokes. And Hurwitz said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he said, "I don't know. Make me cheap. Make me really, really cheap, and make me have this fetish for Burger King." And so he would do anything as long as you would meet him at Burger King, which is very reasonable and all American, and buy him, a burger or something like that. Well, you had Carl Weathers' attention. And in the day books, there's a Carl Weathers shout out that pops up. Occasionally I'll say, you put this together and you put that together and you got a stew going. And that's from Arrested Development, because Carl Weathers. There was no indication that Carl Weathers in Arrested Development was poor. He was just really cheap. And when someone wouldn't have food that they had finished on their plate or something like that, there were leftovers, just like refuse, he would say, "You gonna take those bones or something, because you put that and this together, and baby, you got a stew going." And and it was sort of charming. I tried that. And a lot of that was Carl Weathers' own sense of humor, and he was capable of making fun not of himself but out of himself, and had a really good comedic sense of taste in the way that he did it. And that's just one more thing to love about Carl Weathers.
Did any of you guys see Happy Gilmore?
No.
I did, if I don't remember it.
I did, and I'll tell you, Carl Weathers, he teaches Happy Gilmore, who's Adam Sandler's character, how to play golf. But Adam Sandler's character wants to be a hockey player, and he spots him at this ball pit where the pitchers hit baseballs, and he's letting the balls hit him. "Oh, get tougher, get tougher." And Carl Weathers' character is watching him. He's just like, and he sees them hit this. He goes, "Hey kid, you could play golf. I'll teach you." Carl Weathers, who is not a comedian, but is as funny, if not funnier, than Adam Sandler in that whole movie.
He does have. There are two stories about him that, actually, a story and an incident that kind of, I think, show his humor. The one story that I heard was that when he was filming Predator, he would work out and not let anyone else know, like do it out of the range of his co-stars, so that when he would come in and they'd ask, "Well, oh wait, you're so buff, what are you doing?" He'd say like, "Oh, I'm just naturally this way."
This is how I am.
But later, in promoting the film on Saturday Night Live, he did a skit, and the skit was it was in '88, so it was a presidential election year, and he announced that he was going to run for president, because and why would you run for president? He's the black guy from Predator. And I think that kind of shows that it's very easy. There's a tendency with some actors who are trying to escape typecasting to take themselves super seriously and not lean into that humor. Weathers, I think, did two really smart things. He varied the amount of work he did, because he was not only doing films, he was also doing television at about the same time, which is always a good move because he's not banking on being a movie star or banking on being a TV star. He's banking on being an actor. And I think too, because he could see the inherent absurdity, it made him a little bit more open to doing things like Happy Gilmore or Arrested Development, whereas somebody else might say, well, what's this? Why are you having me do this? No, they're all mean to each other. Why do you want me to do this show?
Well, Carl, but the thing about the characters, because the characters on Arrested Development are really mean to each other. He gets to stand out by being the guy who's not mean to people,
Mm-hmm.
and that just increases his own likability.
What's you guys' favorite movie of Carl Weathers? Got one?
Action Jackson.
Yeah, that is a great movie.
Yeah, because I feel like someone figured it out. Someone figured out this guy needs to be the lead in a because for its time, Action Jackson was a decently budgeted movie. It was not a small budget movie. It was a studio movie. It had Craig T. Nelson as the most evil man who ever lived in it, and it's got Sharon Stone. Pardon?
Sharon Stone. Vanity
and Sharon Stone. And it was released, I think, in around this time of year. It was sort of getting to be late winter, mid to late winter, very early spring. 88.
88.
Yeah. And I saw it in San Diego, and I was so excited, and it delivered. That's the other thing, is that I would show Action Jackson to friends, some of whom were kind of film snobs, and they all loved it. They all had a great time. It accomplished exactly what it was supposed to be, and that was a good period for action movies, because you had action movies that were quote unquote good enough, not artsy enough, but just good enough that they appealed to non-action fans as well. You didn't have to, Die Hard is another one of those movies that just works. It works as a film, and you can't be Action Jackson in a movie like Action Jackson and have anything other than a success. Meaning it is incumbent upon you, if you're playing Action Jackson in a movie called Action Jackson, you better make it work. And he, by God, did. Every scene is, works. It's just, I'm happy to see him. I'm happy to watch whatever he does. The screenplay meets him on that level. I would agree. That's my favorite.
Butch?
Yeah, I can't argue. I don't know if that would be the first one I would come with, but it's a fine choice. I tell you, for a long time during the 80s, I kept thinking, I wish he would play Luke Cage. I wish someone would offer him the role of Luke Cage. Not to knock, I can't think of the actor's name on the former Netflix series, who does a great job. I'm not, just
whoever
him, but
played Steve Urkel.
But the thing for me about Luke Cage was everything we've talked about here. Had a charisma, got your attention, kept your attention, did his job. That, to me, that's Luke Cage.
Did you see? I'm sorry. Tell me more about Luke Cage.
No, I was just going to say, I really wish someone had put him and Richard Roundtree in a movie together. I think that would have been like a great buddy flick, even if they're not buddies. To me, there's a lot of crossover with them.
Throw in Bernie Casey.
Oh yes,
sure.
God bless him,
sure.
Bernie goddamn Casey. Sure. What a guy. Did you see? Did you see? Season 3 of Mandalorian? It's good. Other than the weird Luke episode that they really kind of messed up the Jedi even more and made them even worse as characters. That's a great sort of send off. I wish it hadn't had to be, but for Carl Weathers, because his character, I think, has come to a really nice place of great respect, and he's almost this Henry VIII type leader without all of the death. It's just he's luminous, and I'm glad that his character, I guess Grief Karga, is that the name of the character, ended that way. If they do a season 4, that will have been a really respectable way to have seen him last.
There was a show called Psych. It was about a fake psychic detective.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very funny show. Carl Weathers was in it with another man. He was partnered with another man to be his partner as a detective. And Sean's father brought these two guys in to compete with Sean and Gus. And as they're working this case sort of opposite together at the same time, Sean and Gus are slowly realizing, oh my God, this is us in like 30 years. And like it's the way, and Carl Weathers, the way he talks to the Gus and Sean, it's just hilarious. Like I watched like the whole series, but that episode is, well, all the episodes are fun, but the episode is just fun with Weathers in it, and it's just funny. So,
Joel, because I think we're probably headed towards the end of this. When we were supposed to talk about the movie Thanksgiving tonight, and when I got the news, I immediately got in touch with you, and I didn't know how you were going to respond. And although you have a heart the size of Canada, so I thought there's probably a pretty good chance that you were going to be amenable, but I didn't know what Gordon's relationship with the work of Carl Weathers was, or Butch's, and so I just kind of felt them out anyway. And isn't it extraordinary that all 4 of us have this just immediate and instinctive and unbelievably fond relationship with his work and with who he was? What a tribute!
When I was waiting for Joel to call, I caught a video of Sylvester Stallone.
Oh my God! Is this where he's in front of the Neiman painting? Oh wow,
very
that's really good.
I think Stallone was trying hard to not cry.
He admitted it.
Like, wow. It was just a very touching tribute to a friend and someone who helped him get started on his way. And
it made me want to call Stallone and see if he was okay.
Yeah.
Really did.
If I pass, when I pass, I don't know if you get to watch YouTube in the next life, but if there's a video of comparable to someone saying that about me, I'll be like, you know what, did something right. But it was very touching and a little bit sad if you go look for it. Just want to prepare you for that.
Sure. A good sad, a very respectful, and a very good sadness.
Yeah. Is there anything you guys want to add about the late Carl Weathers before we get on out of here?
I wanted to give you a kudos, Jewel. I thought that was a very classy way to start the video with your moment of silence there. So give yourself a pat on the back from me.
That's interesting. When Marcel Marceau died, Jewel insisted on a moment of sound.
Listen.
In French.
Yeah, and I think that the best tribute to Carl Weathers is that I don't think there's, regardless of what you're looking at, I don't think there's a truly bad Carl Weathers performance.
There's not.
Yeah.
Friday Foster. Wasn't he in Friday Foster?
Yes. But that was like one of his first or second films.
I think it was his first role, but I was trying to think. I was like, there was some blaxploitation film he was in, and
that movie had a hell of a cast.
It did.
Yeah.
It did.
You know, kind of building on Patrick's comment, I'm wondering why Larry Cohen never had Carl Weathers, Richard Roundtree, and Bernie Casey in OG2.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You know, there's some movies like that with actors, and you know, we're not talking high dollar A-listers, and I'm not trying to be insulting. You know, it's not trying to get Schwarzenegger, Stallone, and Willis in a film, which, you know, right there's your budget. But
Yeah.
the three you just mentioned, that'd be a hell of a film.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it wasn't like a great script, just a good script that gave you what you wanted, and showed the guy do their thing, I'm there.
Yeah, I mean that would be like it's like a Rat Pack movie. You know, whether the movie's great or not, you're just happy to see these people together and working together.
There is. I know we're not ever going to get to see him in it. The one thing I would have loved to see Carl Weathers get to do is be in an episode of Dark Shadows, where he plays this fake spiritual advisor, or this person who says he can communicate with the dead but can't. He's trying to hustle the Collins family.
Yeah, I mean he could do that, but I would also be thrilled to see him as Professor Stokes's protege, who's shown up to deal with some other problem that has Professor Stokes couldn't make it, but Professor Davis can.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Again, we just want to say give our condolences and our sympathies to Carl Weathers' family. Guys, thank you so much for joining me on this. This was
Joel, thank you.
Thank you guys again. Thank you to Gordon Dymowski, Butch Rosenbalm, and Patrick McCray. And you guys have a great weekend.
And thank you to Joel, whose last name I can't think of.
James.
He's just Joel to me. He doesn't
Joel
have
Verne.
a last name.
It's okay. I don't know.
It's like Cher.
It's okay. I don't know my own last name.
I want to throw
anymore.
you in there and give you a thank you also. I mean, it's your channel, so cool of you to
we really appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I appreciate talking about him. I mean, because he's somebody I grew up watching. Just phenomenal. But again, thank you, gentlemen. You enjoy the rest of your weekend and be safe.
Take care.
Good night, all.
Bye.